So I'm going to go ahead and get started. The one thing I wanted to point out was the you should have seen the workshop website from last time. I had added a bunch of links off to the right that are kind of references to past classes that I've taught and workshops. One of them that I wanted to point out here was the one here about wall sections and details. You might take a look at that and take a look at how you can actually use Revit to model. You basically draw 2D details on top of your model, so it's tied to the sections and the floor plans and any kind of detailing that you're doing. Plus, there's some really cool tricks in there about using repeating details, so that you don't have to do so much drafting. It's basically drawing a line and it's copying all these details up and so on. So check those out. And then, of course, I added some more, obviously, references to the material that we went over on the last workshop. Today, really the focus is going to be on using the railing tool and the stair tool, but I can't talk about railings and stairs without first talking about parametric profiles, because in order to really use anything within this part of Revit, you have to understand the 2D profile. And because we're working with the 2D profile, we can also use that to help customize our curtain wall systems, so that you don't also have just your typical curtain wall. You can get a little bit more detail in it to be more customized to whatever project you're using or designing. But the other part of this is I want to also stress the fact that the railing tool and the curtain wall tool aren't just made for modeling curtain walls and railings. We're going to go beyond and show just an example of how we can use these tools to model other things. And then later on, when I post the website, I'll also give you some links to some other topics that are very similar, just for your expanded reference. So if everyone can open up Revit, let's go ahead and I'm going to close out of this. Let's go ahead and open up a architectural template, and we'll keep that one open in the background. And I'm going to actually go to, if we go back to our splash screen by going to View, User Interface, and Recent Files, let's go ahead and open up a new family. And this family, we're going to go ahead and make a couple different profiles here that we're going to use in different ways. So if we can scroll down, you get a bunch of different profile templates that you can use for modeling. They're very specific to either railings, reveals, mullions, and so on. But if you just pick the first one here called profile, basically if we model any profile within this environment, we can use it in any of the railings or the mullions or any other component that has to reference a profile. So it's usually good to keep it generic so you can use it across the board. Let's just go ahead and open that up. This is something we did at the first workshop, but I'm going to go ahead and customize this a little bit more. One thing to keep in mind here is this insertion point, so where these two horizontal and the vertical lines cross, is very important when we start thinking about how we're going to use these profiles. The first part is if we're using these for stair treads and risers and nosings. Here's a little diagram off to the left that shows you where your profile needs to be modeled. And I say modeled, but it's just really a 2D element. But anyway, your tread surface is in the bottom right quadrant. When you're doing nosings, that's going to be in the bottom left. And then also your risers are going to be in the bottom left as well. So you just kind of keep that in mind. I don't have a diagram for the other one, but when we start to model mullions work by essentially being centered about this vertical, and that's something we're going to do here in a minute. And then also if you're using railings, your profiles for railings, basically this horizontal is the top part of the railing. So pretty much everything that we model is kind of down here in these two quadrants. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and first model I'm going to create a reference plane. Let's go ahead and make a reference plane horizontal down here at the bottom. And if you can, strike a dimension between these two. And this way we can give it a parametric quality. So what I'm going to do is click on that dimension, and in the options bar, you can, where it says label, you can do a pull down there and tell it to add a parameter. And let's go ahead and make this D for depth. And we'll keep it as a type and just click OK. So this next part is I'm going to create a reference plane on either side of the vertical. And then if we take this reference plane, I'm just going to mirror it. So we kind of have it equal on each side. And then I'm going to strike a dimension all the way across all of those reference planes and make those all equal by using the equality setting on your dimensions. And then I'm going to do an overall. This way I can get an overall width and overall depth of this component. And we're going to use this kind of framework for a couple different profiles. This dimension that we just made here at the top, I'm going to go ahead and select that and go to where it says label and also go to add parameter, and we'll call that a W for width. Over here in the your family types dialog box, so that's over here at the top left, let's just go ahead and set these parameters. The width is going to be 2 inches, and our depth we can make, we'll do 5 inches for right now. And we'll also, over here to the top right where it says family types, if you click on new, let's just call that 2 by 5 just to give this a name so that we can eventually select it. So if you click OK, all of your parts and pieces should kind of move together there. I'm going to wait a minute so you guys can catch up a little bit. We're going to need this set of reference planes for a number of different details. So if you're going to be following along, we need to use those for about 2 or 3 different profiles.
Sorry, where was the family types editor?
Right here where it says, it's kind of the icon up at the top left, and it's just called family types. You can also add those parameters through that dialog box as well. You can just hit add parameter and type in your W and your D. When I was doing the dimensions and then clicking here to add the parameter, that's just a shortcut to get that done. While you guys are making that happen, I'm going to do a save as. And let's go ahead and call this one call it a profile mullion. And I'll put an H at the end, mullion H. I'll explain that in a minute. All right, if you can catch up if you haven't gotten that far, but I'm going to go to create, and with the line command, I'm going to go ahead and start using the pick lines part here for drawing your last tool at the end. And I'm going to pick the reference planes that are all around the edges, and I'm going to lock this line to those reference planes. Because we made dimensions locked to the reference plane, that allows us to make this grow and expand. So wherever these lines are locked to those reference planes, they're going to move with it. Now I'm going to use the trim and extend commands just to close that off. And then the last step here is I'm going to use the offset command, and I'm going to offset a 1/2 inch towards the interior and making it copy. I'm going to do that all the way around. So basically this 1/2 inch is going towards the interior. And then the last step here is to split the element. So I'm going to use split element, and I'm going to split, see those lines, because basically what I want to do is make an H, have this kind of look like an H as we go around. So when I trim and extend, and then I have to split these lines here in the middle. Basically, whenever we make a profile, your profile can be any shape that you want it to be. It just has to be a continuous closed line. So it has to go all the way around, and you can't have any additional lines. So that's why I had to trim all those out. So I'm just making kind of this customized mullion here that we can use in different applications. A couple other things here is, since we drew all those lines kind of offset towards the middle, what I need to do, since this is parametric, is I'm going to lock dimensions from reference planes all the way to those lines. And the reason I'm doing that is wherever these reference planes go, I want these lines to also remain, ½ inch apart. I'm going to change my scale here in a minute just so my text isn't so big. Don't worry too much if you can't get it to, be parametric, but I'm going to add a couple, components here. So once that's done, and you've locked all those dimensions, I can go back to my family types dialog box, and I'm going to create, I've got the 2x5 version, I'm going to create another family type up here where it says new, and I'm going to call this one, let's call this a 4x8. And then you can change the dimensions here now so that the W is 4 inches and the depth is 8 inches. And if you did everything right, then basically all your profile lines should have moved along with those reference planes. So I'm going to hit save on that just so I have those two elements. And then we're going to do a save as of this and then kind of modify this to do another profile. How far is everyone from kind of completing this one? Got to click fast. Any questions of what I did there? It's basically just some drafting, but again, I'm making it parametric by these reference planes. And the reason to make this and understand this profile family and how to make things parametric is really key, because in order to have your railings and also mullions and all these other tools that we're about to use reference these components, in order to size them, you have to make your component parametric. So, well, you don't have to, but it makes things a little bit easier. So again, if you can't get it to be fully parametric, at least get it to that shape. I'm going to do a save, and then I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to call this one profile mullion, and instead of the H, I'll call it fin, as in a louver type fin. And I'm going to actually delete all of those lines that we just made. I want to keep those reference planes the way I have it. And I'm going to change my depth here. I'm actually going to delete these family type names. I'm going to change the depth to 18 inches. And I'll keep the width at maybe, I'll keep it at 3 inches. And click OK. I'm going to draw another reference plane. So if you didn't finish the other profile, you can go ahead and start doing this one. So at least you have one of them parametric. I'm going to draw another reference plane that's going to be below this horizontal. And then I'm going to draw two more verticals, but they're going to be kind of inside. It's really the same thing that we just did with the other verticals. I'm going to mirror that about the center. And I'm going to give these another dimension, making those equal. And I'm doing an overall down there. So basically you have an equal and an overall at the top, and then I've got these other verticals that are doing the same thing, equal and a dimension. And then I'm doing a horizontal plane that's down here that's going to have a dimension to it. And if I click on this overall dimension for that vertical and go to label and add parameter, I'm just going to call that D capital F, just for we already have a D. I'm just making it a different parameter. We'll click OK, and this other one down here will be add parameter. I'll just call it W and then capital F. So what I'm doing there is I'm just going to make these dimensions. My WF, I'll just go ahead and make that like 1 inch. And the DF, we can keep that at maybe 4 inches. And if you click apply, all those will kind of move into place. So I'll zoom in on that real quick. So those are basically the 4 parameters that will be part of this mullion. And I'm not going to change these. We'll just keep them as is, as what you see up here. But obviously, now that the parameters are set, you could make different sizes to reference. So the way I'm going to draw this is to use the create lines and choose the pick lines command. And I always use this one because we can pick the reference planes and then lock it. And that makes it where these lines will be able to stretch and move as we need them to. Once I make kind of the outline here, I'm going to trim and extend only the ones here at the top. And then I'm going to use the align command. And I'm going to align that horizontal with this end and lock. Do the same thing with this other side. And then with this line that's down here at the bottom, I'm going to use the align command, align and lock each of those endpoints. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to create kind of this fin look, and I need those straight pieces to be locked to the different parts of the reference plane so that they're going to always stay there at that location, and then they'll kind of stretch and move into place. So essentially that's what that component's going to look like. And if you've kind of set that all upright with all the locks and so on, again, I could create a new family type. This would be type 1. And just as an example, I'll create a type 2. And I could change my dimensions here. 6 inch. And everything should stretch and move into place. By making those different types, we can now reference them in the next project environment. So I'm going to hit save on that, and those will be the two components that we'll use for this first part. So again, and I also just use the profile family. So when you look at your properties off to the left, every profile family has a profile usage that's set for it. This one is set to generic because we just use the one called profile. But if you look at the down arrow here, you can also specify that these profiles will only be used for fascias, gutters, mullions, railings, reveals, slab edge, slab metal deck, stair nosing, stair riser, stair support tread, wall foundation, and wall sweep. So all of those components are what use the profile family when we're modeling in Revit. So that's why it's kind of important to know these particular components. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save on that, and we can close out of this. We can go back into our project environment where I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to load family, and I'm going to go ahead and find those two families. And I'm going to pick the mullion fin, hold in the control key, and pick mullion H to bring those both into the project environment. So one thing I want to talk about is I've already shown you guys how to use curtain walls and storefront systems in a previous class. But what I want to do is talk about how to customize those to be made into anything else. And the reason I'm doing this is that back before the railing tool was ever created in Revit, the way you made railings was with the curtain wall tool. And there's some advantages and disadvantages to it. There's also disadvantages and advantages to using the railing tool. None of them are still perfect, but these give you options in how to model, using these different components. And again, all of these components are using those profile families. So I'm going to go to architecture, and where it says wall, I'm going to use the pull down arrow and choose architectural wall. And then I'm going to scroll down in my properties and find curtain wall number 1. I'm going to hit edit type on curtain wall 1, and let's duplicate this and call this sunshade system. Now one thing about the curtain wall system is that it always has a default panel or curtain panel that's part of it. Right now it says curtain panel is none, but what it does is it actually draws a 1-inch piece of glass. If you truly want this to be empty, which I do, basically don't want any glass in my sun shading system, I can go ahead and click on curtain panel, and where it says none, I'm going to change this to be, scroll all the way down to the bottom, empty system panel empty. It's a little redundant there, but if you pick that one, that will make it so not a piece of glass will be drawn in this particular wall. The other thing I'm going to do is where it says vertical mullions and horizontal mullions, I'm going to now set these to be referencing my profile families. But if you notice, I don't have any profile families to reference at the moment. It is trying to reference a particular rectangular mullion or a circular mullion and so on. So what that means is that I'm going to hit OK on the dialog box, is I actually have to go to architecture and click on mullion. And I'm going to duplicate this rectangular mullion and then set it to these various different types of, we're losing our screen, different types of profiles we can set here to the rectangular mullion. Let me hit pause here for a second. All right, so I'm going to continue here. I selected mullion, and right here where it says rectangular mullion, I'm going to go ahead and click edit type so that I can duplicate this. I'm going to duplicate this first one and call it, what did we have, a mullion H. That was a 2x4. I'll just call it like 2x4. So this is just naming the mullion so that we can select it. But basically what this dialog box is doing, as you can see here, it's referencing a profile. So now that we've loaded in those profiles, you can go ahead and select from the down arrow, you can go ahead and find your mullion H. Actually, I had 2x5 there, so I can select that. I'll rename this to 2x5. And then I'll go ahead and keep all the other settings there just as is and hit OK. I'm now also going to go back and hit edit type, and I'm going to duplicate this again, and we'll do the other one that I had, which was, what, 4x8? So mullion H, 4x8, and then I'm going to choose that profile. I'll do this one more time because we're going to select the fin. So I'm going to go to edit type and hit duplicate, and we'll call this one mullion and then fin. And again, if we go to our profile, we should be able to select and find mullion fin. I had type 1 and 2. I'll just go ahead and do a type 1. I guess since I made 2, I could do this one more time and duplicate it. Mullion fin type 2, and then select that profile. So now that we've set all those mullions into basically the project environment, now when we go back to our wall and we're picking our sunshade system, I can click edit type, and now I can choose those mullions because we've set that up in the project environment. So right here where it says vertical mullions, I'm going to do my interior type. I'm going to set that to the 2x5 mullion, and my borders, I'm going to go ahead and make those both the larger one, the 4x8. For the horizontal mullions, I'm going to go ahead and make the interior type equal to, we can go ahead and make that fin type 1. And then my border type 2, I'm going to also make that the 4x8 H1. So I'm going to go ahead and Control C and Control V that into those different fields. And we can go ahead and click OK. Now I can just go ahead and draw. So I'm going to draw a like a 12-foot section here. And then if we look at this in elevation, we can work on this just like we do with our curtain wall systems. We go back to architecture and curtain grid. But now when I start making the grids, I'm going to kind of copy this down. Let's do like 1'6". Now when I look at this in 3D, you should be able to see where, if I turn on kind of a shaded look, you've got your detailed mullions, and then you've got this other system here that is part of that. So now every time I add, and it looks like, it doesn't look like I have any glass in there, so that's good. So now if I go back to my elevation, I can go ahead and complete this by, I'm going to select that curtain grid, and I'm going to use the array command, and I'll type in 1 foot, distance apart. Let me just type in like 10 of these repeating. And I can go ahead and make a vertical grid here in the middle just to kind of complete this. So you can imagine this is some kind of a frame system that's hanging outside of your building that has, your basically your sun shading system. It's kind of just an idea of how you can use the curtain system, the curtain wall system to kind of make any kind of customized element that you want. So any of these components, and you can see where I've got the vertical here in the middle is kind of completing or actually cutting through all of those. If you select and tab over one of those mullions, you get those little crosshairs that you could actually select each one of these and then make it so that maybe these horizontals are continuous. So you get a little editing options there.
What are you doing there to make it continuous?
I'm tabbing over and selecting the mullion, and this is for any kind of curtain wall. You get this little hashtag symbol. You can go ahead and click on that, and it defines what's prominent, basically, either the horizontal or the vertical. So any of those tools that we've used before, you can go ahead and use that. But one thing is, back in the day, before the railing tool was invented, we used to make railings in the same way. So, and the advantage of this is that, I'll make a simple railing here. I'm actually going to go back to our mullions, and let's set up. I've got, let's see, a circular mullion here. It says 2.5 inches circular. That's a pretty big element. I'm going to hit edit type on that and duplicate it. And let's just call that 1.5. That's kind of big still. Let me just do a, let's do a cable rail. I'll do 0.25 inches, which will be the diameter of the cable. So I'll do 0.25 inches as the name. And then I'm going to come here where it says radius, and I'm going to make that 0.125 inches, which is 1/8 inch, because I want the thickness to be, a 1/4 inch. So we'll go ahead and make that circular mullion, and then I'm going to make another mullion here. Go to our rectangular ones where it says 2.5 by 5 inch. I'm going to edit that one, hit duplicate, and let's make this more like 1 inch by 3 inch. Kind of like a bar stock, a steel bar stock that would be a little more delicate. So 1 times 3. So what I need to do is my overall thickness for this will be 3 inches. And then the way that the mullion works when it's rectangular is it wants a half inch or a half of the side on either side because it places it by the center line. So if we're doing a 1 inch, I want 1/2 inch on either side. We can click OK. So I'm going to go back here to level 1 floor plan, and if we click on wall and our curtain wall sunshade system, I'm going to click edit type and duplicate, and let's make this, we'll call this cable rail. And this one, remember your curtain panel is empty. Of course, if you wanted like a glass curtain panel, you could keep that in there or change that out later. I can show you that in another video probably. But where it says vertical mullions, I'm going to make all of those equal to the 1x3 mullion. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to hit Control C and Control V to just paste, so I don't have to keep hitting the down arrow. My horizontals, I'm going to make my borders the 1x3 as well. But my interior type, let's make that the circular 0.25 inch circular element. Now I could go ahead and set my vertical grid and horizontal grid layout so that I can just draw a line, and then this all these mullions will kind of populate. So if I click on vertical grid, I'm going to change this to be our fixed distance, which would be kind of where every post would occur. I'm going to make that maybe like 4 feet apart. And then the horizontal grid, I'll go ahead and make that a fixed distance, and let's make that 4 inches to meet the code, because you need horizontal, where you can't have any kind of 4-inch sphere passing through your guardrail system. I'm sure you'll hear that in the near future. So I'll make that 4 inches. And I'll click OK. Now when I draw this, what I'm going to do is specify a height. And typically your guardrails are 42 inches high. So I'm going to make that 3'6". And then I'll start drawing. And when I'm done, should have a guardrail system. And of course, I'd probably tab over and eventually take out this this bottom border, which actually I think is, if I go back here to border 2, horizontal mullions. Let's see if we can set that to none. So I didn't delete anything. Well, the other way I could make all the borders, I'm going to set those to none. I'm just trying to make a little shortcut here. Delete the mullions. There we go, we got the top one. So I'm not sure why the top one stayed. But anyway, you get the point where you can go ahead and make these curtain wall systems also generate these mullions, and also the kind of the cable rail system and so on. Now the advantage of this is that I can customize exactly where I want all of my vertical rails to be. Now I had to click on this and I went edit type, and I specified here that my vertical grid was 4 feet on center, but I could actually set that to none. And then when I'm looking at this in an elevation, I could actually specify that maybe I have more of a pattern where, let me delete all those. That worked. So anyway, I could start to add more, kind of your post and so on, and you come up with a pattern, or add in additional, supports, because not all the time do you necessarily, when you're designing a guardrail system, and rarely do I ever have posts that are exactly 4 feet on center all the way across your element. You're usually trying to make your posts align, with something in your architecture. Some kind of other element that's part of your space. And so a lot of times you might have something that's 5 feet apart in one section, maybe it's 4 feet apart, and you come up with a pattern. Or maybe you want some of these posts to be real close together, where you've got a kind of a double post. So you could have every other one is some kind of double post system or whatever, so that you get some kind of design that's associated with your guardrail system. And you'd normally give the contractor or somebody a layout plan that would show you where all those posts are. Now the reason why this is important with the curtain wall system is that when we get into the railing system acts exactly like our this dialog box right here, where we've got the vertical mullions, where you would place them at a certain interval, and that's basically your only option, is to allow Revit to lay it out for you. Yes?
Is there a way to set up the pattern in the system so you don't have to go in and manually place each rail?
Unfortunately, once you get away from any kind of continuous repetition, you have to kind of go in there and do it yourself in a way to customize it. So like right now, anytime you want something to repeat, it's always going to be repeating based on that particular pattern. So I guess the other way would be you could make a mullion, that we made the one that looks like an H, and then you make another mullion that looks like just the rectangular. And what you could do is you've got a couple different options with your borders. All of your interior types could be one mullion type, and your borders could be something else. And you could physically draw maybe only 10-foot segments at a time, and then you'd end up with kind of a variation that way. But yeah, unfortunately, you'd have to kind of go in there and look at it in elevation and then give it some kind of pattern. Now, the disadvantage of doing it this way is number one, when we get into doing anything that's curvilinear. So if I were to go into our floor plan here, and I'm going to draw the same guardrail, and if I were to make this curve, so if I'll draw this kind of going the other way. If you recall from one of our previous sessions, that the curtain wall system doesn't curve until you start to slice it up with its vertical placement. And actually I could change that by going back to edit type, and remember I took out my vertical grid layout, give that a fixed distance back to 4 feet, and it should pop that into place here in a minute. But the disadvantage is when you look at this, it does try to make the curve happen, but it's very segmented. The way that the curtain wall system likes to work is it is always going to draw kind of a straight line from kind of one part of the component to the other. So you're going to end up with this kind of segmented look, which probably is probably accurate, if you're using like a cable rail system and things like that. But if you actually wanted this to be kind of like metal rods that actually kind of curved with the radius, then this tool really isn't the way to go. So that leads us to working with the railing tool. The railing tool has kind of some more advantages, where it's basically, the tool is a way to repeat a post every now and then, for some kind of pattern. But it basically then takes your rail system and makes it into a sweep. So your sweeps, as you know, can be a continuous element, so that it'll actually follow any kind of curve or anything that you happen to do with it. The other part that's advantage of the railing is that the railing will follow stairs, and it's also going to follow ramps and any kind of inclined surfaces. That's the other disadvantage of this curtain panel system, or the curtain wall, is that we can only really get this to be a straight element. You can't tilt it, up or kind of rotate it to follow a stair. So you have to use that usually on kind of flat surfaces. So what we're going to do here is, this is something everyone can do. So if you couldn't keep up with the curtain wall mullions and all this system over here, let's go ahead and kind of start over, and we're going to work on the railing side. And the railings are again going to use profiles, but what I'm going to do here is, in the project browser, let's go ahead and work with a couple profiles that are already part of the architectural template that we can customize. So I'm going to scroll down to where it says profiles, and I'm going to expand that in the project browser. So again, that's under all the way down at the bottom under families. And then these are all the families that are loaded into the project. And you can see here where I've got my profile, mullion, H, and all those things that we just made. There's one here called circular handrail. I'm going to expand that. And there's a 1 inch and there's a 1.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and just double left click on the 1.5 inches, which will bring up its dialog box. And now I'm going to duplicate it, and let's give this one, let's call it 1/4 inch. And we'll make the diameter here will be 1/4 inch. This will be kind of the same thing we just did with the rectangular mullions. But so we've got that set up. I'll click OK. And that'll add it over here to your project browser so we can select it later. The other thing here is I'm going to pick rectangular handrail. I'm going to expand that one, and I'm going to double left click on, it doesn't matter which one, but I'm going to duplicate it and call this 1 inch by 3 inch. So again, we're kind of mimicking what we just did in the other curtain wall environment. So here the height, it's kind of strange that they have height instead of like depth. I believe the height, that'll be the front face, so that'll be 1 inch. And then the width will be 3 inches. We'll click OK. And so again, it should add it here over to the project browser. So now I'm going to click on railings, and if we click on the down arrow that's associated with the railings, basically railings work by placing on a host or actually, sketching a path. For right now, we're just going to sketch a path. Basically, what it's going to do is bring us into the sketch mode, and I'm going to flip over to a floor plan. And over here to the left, I think it sounds like everyone's been at least putting Revit railings into their projects according to the comments by Jefferson and Kelly. So basically all you have here are what come with Revit are these different handrail systems. I'm going to use the guardrail pipe as a starting point. And I'm going to click Edit Type, and we're going to duplicate this and call it Cable Rail. Now this railing dialog box, and if you're using Revit that's not 2014, so anything prior to that, there's a few differences in everything that we're going to do today with the stairs and the railings that were basically introduced in 2014. So when you look at this dialog box, essentially when you look at the structure here under construction, there's rail structure and there's a baluster placement. Balusters are vertical elements or any kind of 3D geometry that's going to be repeated over a certain distance. Rail structure are profiles that are going to be basically swept across the path. And then down at the bottom here you have top rail, handrails, and a handrail number 2 that can be also associated with this component. The top of the handrail here says circular 1.5 inches. We'll keep that there for now. And you can also see that the height here is set to 3 feet 6 inches. So that's your typical height of a guardrail system. Where it says type and it says circular 1.5, if you click into that box, you can actually choose some other options here, but you can only see that there's 3 options. There's a way to customize those a little bit further, but we'll keep this intact for right now. If we go over here to the baluster placement, I'm going to click on Edit, and we're going to look at this dialog box for a moment. So basically this dialog box is going to be talking about balusters, some kind of baluster family that is going to go from the base of where it's being placed. That's what these first columns are saying. And then it's going to, you're specifying where the top of the baluster is going to extend to. So if you have a bunch of different horizontal rails occurring, you could make your post, stop at halfway up or rail number 2 or whichever one you want. Right now it's going to the top rail element, which is probably what we want for now. And then you've got a pattern repeat here that's set to distance from previous is going to be 4 feet. So I could keep that at 4 feet. And if you wanted some additional components here, I can click on where it says number 2 and I can duplicate this. And I could actually come up with a pattern. So this is where you could actually create a pattern, unlike with the curtain wall system, is I could keep adding more balusters. But the one thing to keep in mind is that these balusters, so I'm going to go ahead and change these for a moment. Let's do the first one will be a round 1.5 inches, and then we'll make the baluster in the middle. Let's go ahead and make that one a, let's see what other options we have. Let's make that a square 1 inch. And then basically what this is saying now with the pattern though is that this second baluster is going to repeat. It's going to basically be 4 feet after the other component. And then these two systems, will keep, repeating in that manner. So right now I think I might make the one in the middle here, the number 3, the square 1 inch. Let's make that repeat 2 feet apart rather than the 4 feet. We'll leave the 4 feet at the end there. We'll keep everything else there the same, but if you look down at the bottom now, the bottom is talking about basically your posts at the start post, the corner. So if you ever make kind of a joint with your path, so if you turn the corner, it's basically specifying what type of post will be placed at the corner. And then you also have your end post. So for now, I'm just going to make all of these equal to the 1.5" round. Let's see. I'm sorry, I did all squares, didn't I? So we'll do the 1.5" square on all of those. But you can start to see also with this part of the command structure at least, you can start getting a little bit of a pattern. Plus, you can specify even different posts for different conditions. So, at the endpoints, you could have like a thicker square or some other design that you have kind of at those locations. It says corner posts are at each segment end, or you can also specify that those never occur or they only occur at certain angles. We'll keep the first option for now, and I'll click OK. Now the next part is the rail structure. The rail structure is basically when you click in that is essentially, if you kind of think about it as an Excel spreadsheet, it's specifying for every horizontal element that you want in the rail, where should it be located, reference to from the base of the rail system. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to delete all of these because we're going to have to change them all anyway, because this guardrail system, if you noticed, all the pipes were 6 inches apart, which actually isn't correct anyway, so we're going to get rid of those. So it doesn't really matter what your rails are named. So right now it's called rail 1. That's fine. I'm going to start this first one at 4 inches. Actually, let's do 2 inches. So the height is 2 inches, and that's going to be from the floor line. Offset will move your profile to the left and right, and we'll get into that a little bit later here. But here's where it specifies what the profile should be, and I'm going to go ahead and select my cable circular handrail 1/4 inch that we made. And then you can also specify what the material is going to be. So I could click on that and then just choose aluminum for like an aluminum aircraft cable or something. Anyway, you get the point there. You can set all that. But if you set everything here first and then select the number 1, I can now duplicate this. And I'm going to duplicate this. I'm just going to do it a couple different times here, because I basically need one of these rail systems 4 inches, every 4 inches leading up until I get to my 42-inch mark. So starting from the bottom here where it says 2 inches, I'm going to type in 6 inches, then I'll go to 10, 14, 18, 22, 26. And if you're tired of doing the math, you can also do, I don't really need to do this, but you could always go to equals. You can, Revit has a built-in calculator, so I could do equals 26 inches plus 4. Obviously, I know that's 30, but if you had some other fractions that you're dealing with, you could always use that as a little calculator there. So I got 2 foot 10. 3'2", and then that's all we need there. I'm going to delete that last one. So basically your numbers should be 2, 6, 10, 1'2", 1'6", 1'10", 2'2", 2'6", 2'10", and 3'2", all the way up. So one of the disadvantages of this is, unlike the curtain wall, I could just specify, hey, repeat this every 4 inches, and it would do it as long as we specify the overall height. It would just repeat this horizontal element every 4 inches. In this case, for some reason, even though you can do that with the baluster placement, for placing railings, it's more specific, and you have to kind of enter in each element line by line. It does give you a lot more pattern possibilities again, so you could imagine specifying different profiles to occur at different sections and so on. Also, when you set up all of those rails, remember, I'm actually going to do this. We can go back to OK. I'm going to go to baluster placement, And this one that was the square 1 inch component, we could actually change the base of this to be rail number 1, and we'll make the top come up here to rail number 9, in my case. So you could specify that actually this post isn't really a post, it's just going to be some kind of vertical element that's going to occur every now and then that's going to basically tie the bottom of the cables to the top of the cables, kind of like as a stiffener, as if you will. So anyway, I'm going to set all that up. I'm going to click OK. Click OK again. And then now I can draw my rail system. I'm just going to draw a line here. And then I'll click the checkbox. And then let's look at it, see what it actually ended up doing. So you can see here, now I've got this, looks like there's a handrail attached to it. So I've got these posts occurring every now and then, and I've got these cables, and then I've also got this component going from, kind of floating there in the middle. Now, if I really wanted my posts to really be, 4 feet apart, which is actually probably a more standard way of creating those, your structural support. If I go back and look at my edit type and my baluster placement, my baluster, that first element, I really want it to be a 2-foot distance, because overall this pattern is repeating, if you add both of these together, 4 feet apart. So when I click OK, I get something in a much nicer pattern there. Set that up. So you kind of get the point there. You can specify all those different patterns. And this additional handrail that's shown here, that's coming from, if you look at the edit type, down here where it says handrail number 1, it actually has a type that's selected there. You could actually turn that off by selecting none, and that'll go away. Now the other component to this is if I were to make this a curved element. So let me go back here to architecture railing. Now I'll go ahead and draw a curve component. I'll do that on this other side. When you look at this element, notice the difference between this one that's over here that's segmented versus this one that follows the curve exactly in a lot nicer way. Any questions on that part? I'm going to expand upon this in a minute because I want to talk about start talking about stairs and how to apply these railings to a stair, but then also talk about how to customize these to a couple different other rail types, rail patterns that we can work with. Anyone been working with the stairs in Revit yet? Has everyone been kind of playing with them? What's your feeling on them? Are they okay to work with, or still kind of confusing, or they're really awkward, aren't they? I'll tell you that they're still awkward even for me, and for most people that use Revit, they are awkward. But I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to use them to the best that we can, and then also how to customize them so that you don't just end up with what comes out of Revit, the sort of the prepackaged elements. You can make something like a glass staircase or something else that would have a little bit more design. I also have at the end here, I'll show you a PDF that is actually from another workshop given by another person that actually kind of shows some, they don't really show you how to do everything, but they show you some interesting pictures of what you can possibly do with the Revit stair tool that you could probably try to figure out on your own. And I'll go into more detail in another video, but that'll be probably not in this session. So let's talk about stairs and working with that tool, because the railing tool obviously is going to be a host component to ramps and stairs, because rails are actually meant to not only be flat, but they can also once they're hosted to an inclined surface, they'll actually model an incline, directly to the host, which is kind of nice instead of having to model those all the time. Anyone modeled railings and stairs in any other program, like Rhino, SketchUp, I imagine? So basically what do? You essentially create kind of a section of what the stair you want it to look like. You have to add it up and make sure you got all the right treads in there and everything, and then you extrude it, some distance, or you do a sweep to get a pattern. And then with the railings, you basically, draw some kind of line, and then you host basically a section profile to it, and then sweep it, all the way up your stair, and you kind of do that. That's basically the same concept but we're going to be doing it in dialog boxes. So we'll just kind of try to make that comparison as we go. The first thing with stairs is that when you work with stairs, you have to have levels in order to connect. Revit wants to calculate how many stairs you need to go from one level to the other. So what I'm going to do is go to the north elevation. It doesn't matter what elevation actually, but just go into an elevation view. And I'm going to change my level 2 to a height of 15 feet. And then I'm going to copy this up. The level 2, I'm going to copy multiple times. Let's just copy it like 3 more times so we get up to level 5. And I'm copying it so it's equal 15-foot increments all the time. And I'm just going to do it like that. I'm not going to worry about making them into floor plans. I'm just going to use those datums to eventually connect our stair components to. So now I'm going to go back into level 1 floor plan, and we can start talking about these stairs. I'm going to, I guess, delete all these things I've already made, or do a save as. So let's talk about the stair component as it comes with Revit, and then how to draw with it, and then we'll customize it with our profiles. The stair has a down arrow that's associated with it, and this is new in Revit 2014. Basically, you can draw stairs either by a component or you can draw stairs by sketch. The old way prior to 2014 was always by sketch. Basically, the difference is a sketch is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to sketch kind of the boundaries, and then it'll generate a stair off of the sketch. A stair by component is actually physically placing a 3D model into your model that's going to be generated by the Revit tools. So we'll start off by stair by component. And the stair by component, once you get into that, you'll see that at the top right here where it says components, you can draw a straight run. You've got your full step spiral. You've got a center end spiral, and then you've got a L-shaped winder and a U-shaped winder. And then you also have the ability to also use the sketch tool. Now, right now we'll just keep it basic and use the straight tool. Over here to the left are your different types of stairs. So you've got a 7-inch assembled stair, 7-inch max riser, 11-inch tread, and then you also have a cast-in-place monolithic stair, and then there's also a precast stair. So there's these different types here that already come with Revit. I'm going to use the first one, the assembled stair. Before you start placing your stair, one thing you need to note is up here in the options bar, it has a location line as the run is either the center, or you're doing it by the left or right, or exterior support left and right. What that means is kind of like when you're drawing a wall, you can either draw your wall and have your wall about the center line of where you're drawing, or you can have it on the exterior side or the interior side. That's the same concept there. For right now, I'll keep it at the center. Also, you could specify an offset from that, and then your actual run width. The default here is always 3 feet, and I don't know why. I guess maybe for residential, but I'm going to at least do 4 feet. Maybe 5 feet would be a little bit more generous. You know, in commercial projects, and obviously in the ones you guys are doing, once you've done your occupant load calculations, you guys are sizing your stair, and that would determine what your width of your stair is supposed to be once you've gotten to that part in the semester. So you would want to type in, that component there. So now I can just go ahead and start drawing, and if I were to draw from left to right, notice, and I can't really zoom in on this too much, But as you draw, maybe I can do a magnifying glass. Nah, doesn't like that. Well, you'll see it on your screen a little bit better, but as you're drawing, you should see the words down there at the bottom of your stair saying, in my case, 26 risers created, 0 remaining. And when I start to go further to the left, so it's taking away stairs, it's constantly telling me that in order to get from, and if you look at the browser here, off to the left, my base level was level 1, and my top level was level 2. So this is a stair trying to connect from level 1 to 2. And essentially what it's telling you is in order for you to make that connection, your stair has to be this long as it goes up. Now code will tell you again when you get into that you can't have a stair that is greater in vertical rise of 12 feet. So obviously if I'm going 15 feet, I know I have to eventually do a switchback. So I'm just going to kind of come here to the middle here where it says 13 risers created, 13 remaining, and I'm going to left click. Then I'm going to draw, I'm going to kind of move up to the top here, and I'm going to left click again, and I'm going to draw the rest of the stairs until it gets to 0. When I do that, it automatically puts a landing in between the stairs and connects those two elements. So if I hit the checkbox here to sort of end, and before I do that actually, there's this other component up here as part of the component stair called railing. And if you click on that, this is where you can specify what railing is going to be attached to the stair. So I can go ahead and I'm going to pick the cable rail that we made and select that. And then you can tell it whether it's going to be on the treads or the stringer. And I'm going to place it on the stringer for right now.
Where was that railing from?
Up here at the top right. Nope. All you have to do is set the parameter there where it says cable rail and put it on the stringer. Click OK, and when you hit the checkbox to close out of this, it'll generate the stair with that railing on it. So you can see there if you look at it in 3D once you've placed it. You need to hit the... You're in some kind of weird sketch mode. Hold on. Yeah, so the question is how come these levels don't show up in the project browser? And that's because when you copy these, it only copies it to a level datum. And if you want those to be additional floor plans, again, you go to View, and then it's Plan Views, and you can go to Floor Plan, and then specify level 3, hold in the Shift key, and it'll make all of those floor plans. And you'll have to do the same thing for ceilings and so on. And that's only because I chose the copy command.
View what?
View Plan Views.
View plan.
Yep. All right, so as you can see, once you've created that stair, essentially the railing is generated on it. You don't, no need to further model too much, except for there's some things you might want to do at the ends eventually. But essentially, it makes that connection all the way throughout, and then up to this location. Now, once you've got all of these levels, let's say that all of your levels are equal. So that's what I made there. I've got 15 foot by 15 foot for each of the datums. I can click on this stair, and if we want this to repeat all the way throughout your entire building, when I click on the stair and it says in our properties, our base level is level 1, top level is level 2. There's another option here called multi-story top level. And if I click on that, I can choose what I want my top level of this multi-story stair to be. And I could go ahead and click level 5, and then it generates your stair all the way up to sort of complete your whole entire stair shaft, basically.
So if your floor-to-floor heights are different, would you have to model each stair?
Yeah, exactly. So if your floor-to-floor is different, you're going to have to go to each floor and then say, okay, from this floor I want to connect level 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 and build them separately, because each one's going to be a slightly different calculation that's going to have to do. Okay. So yeah, this is great if everything's kind of equal. and that type of thing. Now notice that it doesn't generate a floor landing, and that's because it generates an intermediate landing, kind of connecting both of those. And that's because in true construction, your top landing is always the floor. So you would actually model your floor. So if I was on my level 2, and one nice thing about this stair command too is, it automatically puts in the up arrows and the down arrows and the little break line, for your floor plan so it reads correctly. But essentially, you would make sure you had a floor touching this top component and your bottom component. So I might just draw that real quick. And then if I copy that, copy to clipboard and then paste to align selected levels, and I'll do all the rest there. So obviously you would want some kind of floor component there that's going to connect up to that particular stair. Now if you wanted your top, basically your top stair to be a particular tread, essentially, a lot of times what we typically do is you'd have your top tread at the same level as the floor, and then the floor would butt into that, so that all of your kind of surface nosings there would be the same through the flight of stairs. So to do that, essentially I'm going to turn off this multi-level for a second. Turn that back to none. The thing about the multi-level is if you ever have to make an edit to your stair, all you have to do is go back into the original one, so the level one. I didn't have to necessarily turn it off, but I did. But you can make your edits here, and then it will obviously generate and repeat all the way up. But if I look at this in 3D, and if I tab over until I can select this stair run, you see here I get these options to begin with a riser or end with a riser, and there's 2 checkboxes. I got to that by hovering over and hitting tab and then left clicking on this stair. You can specify that it's basically saying to end with a riser, and if I uncheck that, I want it to actually end with a tread, and it's going to also tell me that I need to add another stair tread here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to level 1. I edit my stairs. I can use the drag arrows there. You notice I selected that and you get these drag arrows. Went ahead and I added one more tread there. So I alleviated that warning. And then you can see here I've got the tread coming up to the floor, and I might want to move this, and I'll tell you how to edit these stringers at the end here in a minute. So if I go to my floor plan, I'm just going to go ahead and move this out. Can't move pinned element.
You're going to go over connecting stair handrails with landing rail?
Yeah. You mean if you're up here at the top?
On the landing.
What do you mean connecting them?
No, you were right the first time on the floor.
Oh yeah, on the floor levels. Okay, yeah. So one thing you'll notice that the stringers here, at least here at the bottom, it's cut. So it looks like it's landing flat on a floor, and then up here you can see where it's definitely going up a little bit higher than it needs to, and looks a little out of character of what you would typically have at the top. So to fix that, you can tab over and select your stringer, and when you select the stringer, you get the trim option. So you've got upper end cut, which is a vertical. I could change that to be, let's see, horizontal, which I don't want. Could do it perpendicular, which I don't want either. So I go back to my vertical, and where it says trim support at upper, it says do not trim. I can do match level or match landing support. So if I choose match landing support, that will give me where, essentially this this stringer was always going to be a certain distance off of the stair tread. So maybe like it was set to 2 inches or so on. That's basically what it's doing there. It's kind of chopping that off at the corner there. We can also click on, and we'll talk about this railing here in a minute because it's actually incorrect in the fact that since I have this stair tread is flat at this level, all of this part should be flattening out, to actually be only 32 inches above at this particular level. So I'll go over how to fix that in a minute. But again, if we tab over and select these stringers, this is where again we can select our trim, do match landing support. And down at the bottom, we can do the same thing. So I've got vertical cut, lower end cut. I can change that to be, horizontal if you really want that, or you can make it where, it's perpendicular. But typically the default seems to be probably the best. And I also want I selected both of those. So to edit this this particular railing system, and you notice that my posts are also in different places as we go up the stair, and that has to do with when we go to our rail system and click on Edit Type. Right here where it says baluster placement, we justified it by the beginning. You can choose, kind of justify, like basically start your pattern from the end or the center, or you could do a spread to fit. And usually when you do spread to fit, you get your balusters to line up on all your different railings. Now, so to fix this landing component, which is basically what you're asking, in order to get this to flatten out and then eventually tie up to another rail system that would probably be on this edge, what you would want to do is, I'm going to actually go to level 2 floor plan, and we can click on this railing and we can go ahead and click on editing of this railing. So we want to edit the path. When we edit the path of the railing, you'll notice, is basically a continuous purple line, and that it's going to tell you kind of where the corners are and where this needs to move and so on. But it also is talking about if it's a continuous line, it's going to continue that slope of that element for that whole entire continuation of that path. So what I typically do is hit the split elements command, and I'm going to split this, it doesn't matter where at the moment, and I'm going to move this line so that it's at basically the top of this nosing, kind of where it's going to flatten out. And then I'm going to make sure that this other line also joins up with it. And so basically by splitting this line, I can now specify it to do a couple things. Notice what happens. Notice right now you don't see anything in the options bar, which is this green bar here. If I left click on that sketch line, you get a couple options here that identify height correction and then also the slope. So I could say specify by host, but right now by host, the hosted element is the stair and it's sloping. So if I actually want this to be straight, I could just say that this is actually going to be flat, and then that will flatten out at that location. I could also change height correction if I wanted to by type or custom. I could say, if for some reason I can't get my height to work out, normally when it flattens out, it should be at 42 inches, but if for some reason it's still up higher, you could correct it by using the height correction. I don't really use that command very often, so I'm just going to hit by type. But right here where it says slope and flat, if you keep that there and then hit the checkbox, and now look at this in 3D, I've now corrected that portion of the rail. And so now to make this join up with the rest of the rail system, I could go back to my level 2 here. I'll click on edit path. Since this is already a straight component, I could continue this all the way across the edge however I want, hit the checkbox. And now I've got that where it's connecting up with the actual stair. So I could do the same here, with our other railing. I could actually turn the corner here, so I could actually click on level 2. Get in the right place here. Okay, edit path, and again I'm going to split. And wherever I want it to become straight, that will be my flat component. And then I'll take this other path component and make that link up. And then I can go ahead and make this come across. And I'm going to also make, any kind of additional lines that you make that aren't part of the stair. You want to make sure that that slope is equal to, a flat component. So now you've got that where that clearly, connects together and makes the corner post, and then, continues on. So again, I could click on this stair, and we'll do this multi-story. And it'll go ahead and complete all those as we go up. Now the railing is technically separate from the stair, even though it kept repeating along with the multi-story stair. Well, it is, once you make it multi-story, it makes them all connected. But you could model your railing separate from the stair and then have a little more customization options, especially if from floor to floor, your slab condition, maybe it's doing something different, especially if you've got all these angles on one floor, then maybe another one that straightens out, or there's something different. You can go ahead and model those separately, and to do that, if we delete that off of there, I'll keep the other one there for reference for now. But I could go back to our level 1, or I guess I could do level 2. And to model a railing on top of a sloped surface, so we've already done the railing where I've got the railing system by sketch. I could go ahead and sketch this, and I'll place it exactly where I want it. I'll just kind of draw this. Go ahead and draw this other line. So I'm kind of mimicking what was already there before. But I'm going to do this for a purpose, is that when I'm done making that sketch and I hit the checkbox and look at this in 3D, notice my railing is completely horizontal and based on the level 2 that I actually drew that sketch on. So in order to make that host and slope and connect to the stair, if you select the railing, there's this option here called Pick Host. And so when I pick that and pick the stair, it now makes that connection. And I guess I was incorrect. It actually does, because it was multi-story, it copied that all the way across, all the way up. So if you had different rail conditions, you probably would have to either model the rails differently at each floor line, which I would probably do, like make this rail stop at a certain location and then continue it on, with your regular modeling of your rail system.
Say you designed a staircase that's like a full unit staircase. You're not connecting with your floor slab. So like you had to design the other landing.
Mm-hmm.
So you use the landing when you hit stairs. You choose the landing tool and you draw the landing.
Uh-huh.
And it comes with a handrail on it. So that landing has to be a closed loop handrail.
The whole entire landing.
Yeah, like that's the trouble I have when I create the landing. That rail system has to be closed loop. So if I leave it open ended to connect the staircase, it gives me all these stairs.
So let me recreate that real quick. So if you're, let's see, I'll do from level 1 to level 5, I'll do a stair component. Do that 5. And your stair can also, I'll do this for the example. You notice when I start drawing, the landing automatically tries to connect. So I could actually angle this whatever I want. And then you're saying you're drawing another landing.
Correct.
That's going to be on top of that. So you clicked on landing and then sketched it. So I'll do. Probably should have kept that a little more simple, but. So you're doing something like that. Let me make sure I close that.
Is the handrail across the staircase?
What's that?
Is there a handrail on that landing?
There is not. It's just the stringer right now. Let me put the stringer cable. Yep. So what I would probably do is model that, even though it's considered a landing, I would just model it as a floor, and then you wouldn't have those type of error messages probably pop up. So that's kind of just the basics of stairs. One thing I want to do is talk about the stair component. Again, just looking at level 1, before I do this sketch stair, you can actually go back to the stair component family, and you could play around with these other options, but essentially the spiral stair, that's just going to do exactly some radius you can come up with, and it's going to show you kind of the end of the radius and the start. It'll make your spiral stair. You can do the other one, which is going to be a curved stair. Actually, I'm in the same sketch mode here. So you get the point with those two. The other one here is your L shape. It's just going to automatically formulate a L shape with winders here, kind of in the middle. You can specify winder styles and all those type of things here. You can play around with those, balanced or single point, different dimensions, parallel treads, and so on. You can also go over here to the last one, which is your U shape, which is kind of what I already made over here. The only difference there is that stair actually has winders on it, which, most of those options are more residential type stair components, but you kind of get the idea there as well. It kind of generates those for you. So the component stair works well, obviously, if you're always going to have a straight run. But if you're going to do anything that's more customized, so that, let's say, your stair wants to flare out a little bit, it's a monumental stair. As you get toward the bottom, you want it to start to arc out and become a little more inviting, and then it's going to get narrower and narrower when you get towards the top. That's usually when you start to use the sketch stair. So when we get to looking at this kind of just back at level 1, I'll model this off to the side here, maybe on the other end. I'm going to try to figure out where the edge of my other slab is. On level 1, I'm going to turn on my underlay to level 2. That will make it so I can see what's above. Then I'm going to use the modify tool in my line work. This is something you probably want to use in your floor plans eventually. I'm going to choose for my line work hidden lines, or I think there's one here, overhead lines. I'm going to pick the edges of that slab above.
Is this how you line weight?
Yeah. Isn't that what I went over last class with you guys?
That part of it.
Yep. So in this workshop video that I sent to you guys, this first particular video is actually the one all about line weights that you guys can view, because I actually did that the day after your comprehensive studio workshop on that Friday. So if you do that, it actually has some really cool tips to it, and I can help you guys out with those a little bit later. But I talk about how to do line weights and elevation, Also how to make things fade, so you have thicker line weights in the front, have patterns in the background that kind of fade to gray. So there's a lot of options there. It's only like an hour long, hour and a half video, so you might check that out. But yeah, so the line weight, what I'm doing here is using the line work tool and attaching it directly to this underlay, which is part of level 2. Now when I turn off the level 2 underlay, those dashed lines stay there, but they're now associated with what's above. So if I ever go to level 2, and let's say I go to this floor slab and I'm going to edit the boundary, let me go ahead and do something kind of unique here. Actually, that probably won't work. If I were to move the existing lines that I've already made, so I'm kind of seeing that edit that I'm creating. And now go back to level 1. It should have updated. Huh. I wonder if I was tied to the right. Oh, I'm tied to the level 3 floor slab for some reason. Change it to the level. So let me go up to level 3. Wonder why that happened.
How did you figure out what lines you were actually turning into dotted lines?
So in level, there we go, that updated. So in level 1, all I did was go, if you highlight your floor plans, you can turn on the underlay for any floor plan that's already created. And all I did is I went to another floor plan. So I went to like level 3 or level 2 as the underlay. And then I used my line work tool and I chose that, and then I hovered over each of the lines that were associated with that floor slab, and it basically attached a dashed line to it.
I guess I'm just confused why, so you were in level 1, what indicated that you were selecting the lines that were from level 2? Since, you were working in level 1.
It should have been the underlay, which is associated here, where it says underlay is level 2. That's what. So if I'm gonna switch these off real quick. Let me go back to line.
Is it just that because you selected the overhead line style, that's why you knew you were modifying level 2?
No.
I mean, like, I'll put underlays under what I'm drawing, but I'm still working in the level that I'm in.
Right. So I've got the level 2 underlay, but I'm in level 1.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the floor above. That's what this gray dashed line is. That's the floor slab that's above. And it doesn't matter what line I use. If I'm using the line work, I could use hidden lines if I wanted to. And I'm selecting each of those elements, and it's tied to that floor slab. And if I turn off this underlay now, those lines still stay in level 1 floor slab.
I'll have to play with it, I guess.
You're essentially tracing what's above in that exact same tool. Since I'm in level 1, I'm tracing the components that I see in level 2 because that was part of the underlay. So those lines are just attached to that element.
It was just hard to follow because they were the same profile originally. So I'll just
Right.
play with it and see if I can figure it out.
So I'm going to go ahead and start with the sketch stair and kind of come up with a more customized pattern. And then after the sketch stair, I want to do one more thing that's going to be unique to railings, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions. I'll also give you some additional videos to stairs and things like that, but I want to, I'm sorry, there's one more thing. I do want to show you how to customize your own stair because that's going to be important. So I think we're going to go probably almost the full time here on most of this. So with the under architecture and stair, this time if I use stair by sketch, this works in the same way, but this is kind of the old way of working within Revit stairs, is that you basically have a run, boundary, and risers, and then you have either a straight line or a curve that you can make. You still have your stair here. I've got a 7-inch, excuse me, max riser and 11-inch tread, and a monolithic stair. I'm going to still use that first one. And then you've got your same constraints here. So there's base level is level 1, top level is level 2. And then your width is actually over here down in the properties bar, and I'm going to choose 5 feet. In my edit type associated with this stair, when I click on that, this is where it gives you minimum tread depth and height. You can give your stairs certain materials, and then you can specify what the different profiles are, your nosing profile, and then also your riser profile. You can also see here where you've got begin with riser and end with riser. That was where we tabbed over the component stair and we found those commands. So that's all embedded within the stair by sketch. And then we've got additional stringers, so you can have a right stringer, could be associated with either open or closed, or you can do a middle stringer as well if you had a pretty wide stair. Trim stringers at top, that's those same options, the match level, match landing stringer. All those same things that were with the component stair are just slightly in a different location. That's basically the only difference here. So with this one, I can click on Run, and this does the same thing where if I were to start to draw, it's showing me I'm making 13 risers, 10 remaining, or so on, or whatever the count is. So I can go ahead and draw that, and I can go and specify the other direction, and it's going to connect the landing again in between. So I'll do that again. I'll just start drawing another run. Maybe it'll start to kind of angle off to the side here, and it'll make a landing there in the middle. Actually, if everyone can make kind of a stair in this manner for this component, because we're going to actually customize this stair to not only have kind of a wide flange here at the bottom, but we're also going to eventually delete this landing and give it a different shape, and then we'll go ahead and make all these kind of like a glass stair case that we can use with a steel C-channel stringer that will be associated with it. So basically I've got a straight run, and then I did this other kind of angle off to the side. And then I'll click, actually with my stair I'm going to click Edit Type, and I'm going to make this end with a riser. I'm going to uncheck that, which will tell me that I still need to make one more tread there. There we go. And all you do to make more treads or take them away is you drag that, you click on the blue line here, which is called the run symbol, and you can kind of add by dragging that little endpoint there. So if I hit the checkbox and close out of that and look at my 3D, kind of the same method, exactly what just happened there, and I also applied a railing to it. That's fine for now. I'm actually going to delete the railing because we'll work on that here in a minute. Hide all this. So if I want to customize this stair, being in sketch mode helps me to, basically I can go back into the stair by left clicking in it and go to Edit Sketch. I can now modify the shape of this stair. So I can actually take what you see here is basically the green lines are your boundaries, and the black lines are all the risers that connect from one boundary to the other. So if I were to take one of these boundary lines, and let's say I kind of flare it off to the right, or not the right, to the left, if I was looking at the stair, and I take this other one, and I could actually, I'm going to delete that boundary, and you can see here you get draw tools. If I click on boundary, I'm going to draw with a this 3-point arc. I'm just going to do something like that. And I can then use my trim extend multiple elements, which is up here. And I'm going to select my boundaries, and I'm going to go ahead and get all my risers to go to the edge. I don't think I really need to do that. I can hit the checkbox, and I believe it just fills in all the risers for you. So you can see by changing the boundary, you can start to get different designs associated with your stair runs. as you kind of move up through this element. So you can play around with those shapes. The key is, you basically can only have a boundary on either side, and then you basically want that boundary to link up with wherever the edge of your riser is. So I don't really like that shape. Let me... Go ahead and make that symmetrical, I guess. So anyway, you can do that with each of the stair runs as long as you're with the sketch. I can do the same thing with my 3D component stairs. So if I go back into one of my floor plans, and remember this one was a component stair. If you click on Edit Stairs, wait. Maybe because it's multi-story. For some reason, I'm grayed out. Typically, you're able to convert. For some reason, I can't convert it. Anyway, sometimes you get the option where you can convert your stair. I'm not going to waste time on it, but sometimes you get the option here to convert your component stair. You can actually convert it into a sketch. By doing that, you can't go back, essentially. So basically, you could start with a component stair. It'll turn into a sketch stair, but then it'll always stay as a sketch stair.
Sometimes when we edited the stair, the arrows eliminated.
What's that?
Sometimes when we edited the stairs, the arrow in the middle of the so it's eliminated, especially in plans view.
Say that again? So,
Yeah.
oh, the up and down arrows?
Yeah, when we edited the stairs, for example, we change the shape of the stairs, the arrows disappear in the plan.
It's showing you the up arrow. You can also specify under edit type. Let's see. Actually, if you tab over, I thought there was. So this one I can show my arrows in all the views. Over here, because it was a component stair, that option is kind of hidden right now. I'm not sure where it is. I wouldn't worry about the arrows too much right now, but essentially with the sketch stair, if you look at it when you click on it on the left, you get all these options to show the down arrow. You can change the text. And then you can do down arrow and up arrow. It's not going to show the down arrow until you're up at the next level. Then it should show, your down arrow coming down from that. This other one here will show the down arrow, and I'm not sure why it's. Oh, because I didn't repeat it. I took off the multi-story. So now you've got the up and down when you're in the upper floor. When you're on the lower level, you can only go up, so that's why you're only seeing that.
Is the break line just wherever the floor, so like the view range is being cut?
Exactly. So yeah, if you want this break line to be further up, you also have to specify your cut line for that view. So if I were to change that real quick, see how that moved up? real quick while we're on that subject, one thing I hadn't shown you yet is that if, let's say, your floor plan, you have everything at cut at 4 feet, but you have certain instances where you need to see something cut at 6 feet, there's this option here under View called Plan Regions. So under Plan Views, you can make a plan region. And basically what that is you're highlighting a boundary of where you want a view range to be different. And so I could click on that and say view range is 6 feet just for the stair, and then change that as well. That works well if you have, let's say, a floor plan that has windows up high and windows down low, and you got all these things happening at different locations, and you want to be able to see everything at certain heights. You can use that plan region, just as a quick tip. So we've got this sketch stair. What I want to do is I'm going to click on it and click Edit Sketch. And let me see if I can do this part real quick. Okay, it has to be connected. We'll do the landing modification on a component stair in a minute. Okay. So I want to be able to change and customize the stair a little bit more. Everything that I've been showing you so far is just using the profiles that come with Revit. Let's go ahead and switch back into a user interface and recent files. And let's go back into our families. And I'm not going to make these parametric because we always know what the size of these treads are going to be. But I'm going to go to New, and we're going to choose Profile as our family. Now remember that diagram, which I still have up. If we want to make a tread and we want to customize it in some way, we want to draw our tread in this section of the lower right profile. This over to the left will be our nosings, and then we've got risers over here to the top or the bottom left. So I'm going to do a stair tread at the moment, and let's go ahead and draw with a line. I'm going to draw like 1 foot over. And I'm going to come down 1 inch on either side. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my 3-point arc. Let's just give this a specific shape that's a little bit unique. So that'll be my stair tread that I'm going to work with, and we'll keep it kind of looking at that shape because it's something different and unique for us. I'm going to go ahead and do a file save as, and let's call this stair tread curved for now. Now I'll just keep it like that. I'm not going to worry about nosings and all these other things yet because actually with my stair tread I can go ahead and I'm going to round all these corners anyway, and we'll just we'll use the stair tread as our nosing for now. So I go to create, I'm going to go back to line, and I'm going to use the fillet command. So fillet arc, which is right here under draw. And I'm going to specify a radius. I'm just going to do 0.5 inches. All I'm doing is rounding those edges there. So we've got this kind of unique shaped stair tread that I'm going to turn into kind of a solid piece of glass in a little bit, but we'll kind of keep that there for now as a piece of kind of the structural tread. And I'll make sure I do a save. And then I'm going to load that into our project that we're working in. Now, when I start modifying railings and I start modifying stairs and I start doing all this custom work, it's best to basically cut a section through your stairs so you can understand what all these different parts and pieces are doing. Now, I'm going to, for this exercise, cut a section through the angled part. and look at that in section. So to start modifying this component, I'm going to select our stair, and I'm going to go over here to where it says stair, 7-inch max riser, 11-inch tread. And again, we're doing this in the sketch mode, you know, the sketch stair component. So if I go back here and click on edit type, I can now specify, if we scroll down, our treads. I actually want this to be a nosing profile. Let's see, stringers, risers. That's a nosing profile. So actually, I'm going to back up here. I'm going to make a component stair right next to this one because all of these other commands are in the component stairs now. So all I'm doing is making another component stair. I'll make it similar. Let's make a component stair that is just like this, and then I'm going to cut a section through the straight part so we can look at modifying that. So in this component stair section, when we click on edit type, we basically have these other options here for our run type, landings, what type of material and how that's going to be made up of, and then our different supports, which we can change into so a little bit more detail here in a minute. So my run type, I'm going to click on where it says 2-inch tread, 1-inch nosing, and 1/4-inch riser, and I'm going to click on the little button here that pops up, and this is where we can now change our tread profile so that it's not available in the sketch component or sketch stair. It's available here. Now I can change my tread profile instead of the default. I'm going to go ahead and change that over to our stair tread curved, and I'm also going to take off the nosing profile, so I'll change that to none. Let's see, just default nosing length. Keep our riser there for a moment. Click OK. So you can see where our treads are now the shape that we just created. So you can create whatever shape you want, obviously. I'm going to get rid of these vertical risers and just make this an open, basically an open tread system. So if I go back into run type, click there where it has this particular name, and click on that button. I'm now just going to turn off risers with that checkbox. I also want to, while I'm in this category box where it says tread material, I'm going to go ahead and change that to be glass. We'll make this glass. Now that changed all of my stairs to glass because I didn't duplicate that name. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but just be cautious of what you're changing. So now I have all these glass risers that are essentially that whatever profile that you wanted. I'm also going to change the treads, and I'm also going to put in, not the treads, but the stringers. I'm actually just going to do a middle stringer down here through the middle. So if I select our I'm going to select that stair one more time and click Edit Type. And over here where it says Supports, there's a right support type, left support type, and middle support. I'm going to check the box for middle support. And I'm going to choose my carriage width. Let's see, I'm going to click on that and then click on the little button. And I guess I'll just keep those settings there for now. You can change how many middle supports you have. Basically, I'll just do it equal. Right now, I'll just keep it as 1. If I click OK, I now get a middle support there in the middle, which you kind of expect on probably a glass stair. And I could, also take that stair and click Edit Type. And my right support, I could change to Open or None. So if I do Open, essentially what that does is it cuts the stair stringer so that it zigzag to go along with the stair tread instead of being vertical like this other one. So again, I did that by clicking Edit Type, and I changed my right support to Open. Or if you change it to None, obviously it goes away. So I can now have kind of that floating, like a floating system. And if I wanted to a little bit more, I could click on Edit Type and change my middle supports. Change it to 2. Kind of get those in there. Looks probably a little more realistic. And then since this is a component stair, I'm going to tab over this landing. To delete it. Let me. I'm going to edit. I'm going to click on this. There we go. I'm going to click on the stair. I'm going to click on Edit Stairs. I'm actually going to click on this landing, and I'm going to go ahead and convert it over to a sketch. So let me back up here. For some reason, my Convert to Sketch button is working now. It must have been something to do with that multi-story stair. But since this is only going from one floor to the other, if I click on that stair and click on Edit Stairs here at the top, I can click on different parts of the stair. So let's say I go back down here to the bottom. I'm going to convert the bottom over to a sketch. By doing that, it'll give you this warning message saying once you do this, you can't go back. But what that allows me to do now is edit the sketch of this stair, where I could do something more unique like we did, with the other stair. Village sketch. So you see there where I modified that by sketch, and so I got it to flare out at the bottom. I don't need to really do that. I can keep the one at the top here a component. I can go back over to this landing, and I can do the same thing where I go ahead and convert that to a sketch. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can customize by editing the sketch here. And I probably want to look at this in a floor plan. I could go ahead and make this into something a little bit more unique. You just want to make sure that it's a closed boundary. So you can start to do, a lot of different things there once you start to convert a couple of your components over to a sketch. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail other than the one last thing I want to do is update the stringer to actually be a C channel, because if you ever look at every single stair that's ever made, it's either a piece of tube steel or it's basically a C channel that's on the end. And if you really want to get your stairs to look very accurate and to a level of detail, in your models plus your renderings, one little simple step can make your model, kind of all that. So what I'm going to do is edit out of this stair sketch. I'm going to click on this other stair that's right here that's kind of flaring out. And if you go over here to where it says Edit Type, down at the bottom of your dialog box, you have options for a right stringer and a left stringer. And when it's a sketch stair, you can either only do it as an open or a closed. And that's about it. The reason I'm showing you that is if you're in a sketch stair, you start to get limited to a lot of the stair functions that started to get incorporated into our kind of the latest Revit. So what I could do is come back here to this component stair, and when I click on that assembled stair and go to edit type, right here where it says middle support, and right now I took off kind of my end supports, I'm going to go back and turn on my stringers. I'll do a carriage open. Actually, let's do the closed version on both of those. And where it says right support type and left support type, it's specified as stringer 2-inch width. When you click into that name, you get this button that pops up. And anytime we get that button that pops up for the dialog box, we get this option to add profiles to it. So in this case, I'm going to change my, I'll duplicate this one and call it C channel. And I can change my section profile, and in this particular architectural template, there's already a C-channel profile that's in there, the 9x15. If it's not, I'll show you in a minute how to load a new one in. But I'll go ahead and keep all these other settings, and you can click OK and OK, and here's your C-channel. And to flip it to the other way, I'm going to click on that again. And actually, the easiest way to get into it is I can tab over, select the support, and hit edit type. And I'm back in that dialog box. You can just flip the section and click OK. And you can specify, the structure depth on landing, structure depth on run. So I could actually change this to something bigger, like 4 inches. That'll move it down. I specify it as like 0. Moves it up. So you can see you can start to get another level of detail if you, well, kind of hard to see there, but you can get whatever section profile detail you want on your stringers by just modifying those little end components on a component stair. So you could draw your own profile. Again, if you're drawing a profile, it's just basically going back into that generic profile family and coming up with whatever shape that you want. Let's see, any questions about stairs right now?
I accidentally flipped to the directionality of the stairs.
Uh-huh.
Long run. How do I flip it back?
So under edit stairs, there's usually this flip button that's over to the top right. You can just click that, it'll flip the direction of your stair.
How do I do it for just one run?
Oh, you just did it on one?
Yeah.
If you tab over till you can select that stair, how did you do it on just one?
I have no idea. It happened in plan.
Huh.
Editing the profile, and then when I clicked the green arrow, it flipped.
The green arrow. So you were probably in maybe the sketch mode? Is
Yeah,
that
I was in sketch mode.
okay? The green arrow.
Like, so I finished editing the profile of it, and then it flipped direction.
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I mean, I know you can flip the whole thing as a component by that arrow at the end. So I'd assume you could tab over, but it doesn't look like it's giving me that option. So anyway, kind of looking at the stair, I would expect that everybody should be able to at least make some kind of customized stair for your project, so that your stair tread is a little bit unique, or the way it's being supported. And I'll link you to a PDF that has some interesting ways of working with stairs. But when you read through this PDF at the very end, even this expert says, sometimes your stairs are, don't always work out in these tools, because Revit's essentially drawing all this stuff for you and assembling it together. And you're sitting there trying to place all these profiles in the right location and modifying like where they are in position and space. And sometimes it's just easier to draw them as a generic component. Sometimes if your stair is really going to be that customized, you can just go ahead and model it as a generic component. Does everyone know how to do an in-place family so that you can modify things and make things a little bit more in, basically I could draw a stair section and make it a little more unique. Everyone know how to do those in-place families? Basically, just real quick, what I would do, if you wanted something a little more customized and you got fed up with all of these stair components and the different tools with Revit, you could actually just create a, I'm going to actually create a reference plane here. And I'll name it, we'll just call it a custom run or a stair run. And I could do a in-place family, so I could actually go to architecture and component and model in place. And I can specify this as just a generic model. Call it, stair, whatever. And now I'm in this modeling mode where you have your typical extrusion, blends, revolves, and all those things that you're probably more used to modeling with in other programs. And I could go into like an elevation view, so I can look at my south. And I'll make an extrusion, and it wants me to pick a plane, so I'd choose the one I just drew. And then you could physically model, if you really wanted to. I'm not going to model every part. But just like you would in Rhino, if I was doing kind of a extrusion, I'd have to figure out, how high I need to go and sort of copy that. I'll just do a 3-stepper. So if you're making like a monolithic stair or something like that. Of course, this kind of defeats the purpose of using the Revit tools, but it gives you the ability then to where'd my thing go? It's over here for some reason. Gives you the ability to make your own stair in section, but you could also do a sweep. So you could actually make this profile and then do one of those sweeps, and then you can make a curved stair, or do those type of things if you kind of want to start to curve all your treads. You can curve your stair treads, even down here as well. So if I were to go back to my level 1, and I'm going to go back to this sketch stair just for a second, I could actually take that last riser, or I could do a group of risers. But if I wanted to, I could make that bow out. You could have kind of curved stairs, going up if you wanted to. So for each riser, you could actually curve all the risers. And that's only going to work if you are using the standard, what comes with Revit treads, the ones I couldn't add a profile to. You'll notice that if I were to make that same edit over here, I don't think it's going to like me. Oops, that was supposed to be a riser. It's going to tell me something about need to make sure I connect my boundaries at the end here. Doesn't like my path that I've created. So anyway, if you're on the actual true sketch stair that's not using the components, I'll just quit that. Those specialized components, you can come up with different shapes for your stairs. But if it's locked to a certain profile, then you're kind of locked to kind of more straight type of patterns. Last component I want to go over, and then I can open it up for questions, is using the railing tool to customize a railing that's not just straight up and down. If you want to angle it, or if you want to make a sunshade system or something else, such as in other classes we've used the railing tool to make railroad tracks. We've used it to make, if you kind of look online, you can see people making anything that you can imagine that repeats over and over again, because that's basically what the railing tool is doing, right? You've got the baluster that's being repeated by a certain distance in a pattern, and then it's got a set of extrusions that are essentially happening based on your profile. So I've seen people do roller coasters, trains, even urban design, like if you're doing like a site plan, people have used it to lay out kind of all your street lighting so that it's on a certain interval and so on. So the possibilities are endless, and I'll link you to some examples here, but we're going to do one right now that we can actually implement. So if we go to our view user interface, I'm going to start a couple things here. Is I'm going to click on new, and we're going to go ahead and model a baluster. So if I find baluster post, actually just the one called baluster. Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. Baluster post is fine, because we're going to delete a bunch of stuff out of here. I don't really care about the baluster height and all this stuff. I'm just going to model. I guess I do have to care about the baluster height. It won't let me delete it. So I'm going to change my baluster height here to something like 6 inches. And I'm going to look at, looks like the left elevation should be correct. Okay. That's what it looks like in elevation. Well, let's model this, and then we might have to flip it around. We'll check it out. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an extrusion. Basically, when we're in the baluster family, and this is going to be the case for any post that you make or any design, and we'll come up with a post as well. But what I want to do is imagine a sunshade system, and so a sunshade system has a support every so often, and that fin is going to have a particular profile to it. I'm going to make a create and an extrusion, and I'm going to model this on the left-right plane. And I'm just going to draw, and I'm not going to worry about it being parametric for right now, a line that goes straight up, connecting from the base up to the baluster height. And then I'm going to draw to the right, like 3 feet. From the bottom, I'm going to draw out, let's say 6 inches. And then I'm going to connect, I'm going to kind of make an angle. Something like that, and at the end I'll kind of round it off. So I'm kind of making this aluminum extrusion, if you would imagine, or some kind of steel bar that has this particular shape. And I'm going to only extrude it, extrusion start and extrusion end. I'm just going to make it negative 0.25 inches and a positive 0.25 inches. You don't have to get the same shape, just get some kind of shape that we can work with.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do I do with like picking a plane to draw in? Like whenever I try to draw a line, it asks me what plane.
So what elevation are you in? You would pick the plane of the elevation that you're in. So I'm in an elevation that's left. If you uncheck or expand your elevation, right here where it says project browser.
Okay.
So I'm in the left elevation, so you want to pick the one called left right.
I don't see any names when I click on a line. It just says pick plane. So then I go by the name? Okay.
So you got your down area, yeah, right there.
It doesn't, it just center. Okay.
All right, so I've got my extrusion start and end there. I'm just making it negative 1/4 inch and positive 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to hit the checkbox to get out of this. Look at it in plan. There we go. And that's all we're going to make for this, this part. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and save as, and we'll do a save as family. And I'll call this sunshade fin. So the next part is, so if you imagine this is the solid post that's going to get repeated over and over again. So balusters are always a solid object. That's why you have to model them as a solid, just like we did. And I'm going to close out of this, or actually I should probably load that into our project. And then I'm going to open up a new recent files and go back to our profile. You should probably start seeing how important this profile family is, because it basically does everything in all the different Revit tools that are pretty much available. So while we're in this tool, what I'm going to do is model kind of this fin component.
Where are you in? Profiles?
Just profile. So I'm going to click on line, and I'm going to go ahead and draw let's actually draw some reference planes just so I get a bearing. I'm going to make this 4 inches and this other one 4 inches. So I just drew a reference plane, vertical and horizontal, that's 4 inches from the original. And then under create and line, I'm going to use the start end radius arc. I'm going to draw a diagonal from one side to the other, and then make it arc up. I'll just do the same thing on the other side. So I'm making kind of this flat looking football shape. That's right there. And I'm going to actually flip that. Sorry, I should have done that the other way. And I'll just save that as a sunshade, call it blade. And we'll load that into the project as well. So I'm going to actually go back to architecture and railings. And I'm going to, instead of doing the railing cable rail, let's go ahead and click Edit Type and Duplicate, and let's call this Sunshade. I'm going to, down here at the, after we make it into a sunshade where it says Top Rail, I'm going to change that type to None. I'm not going to worry about a top rail because we're not really making a railing. And then where it says balusters and placement, I'm going to go ahead and do a, let's find our fin. So I've got sunshade fin and sunshade fin for each of the balusters. I'm going to make them, the first one is going to be 4 feet apart. The next one I'm just going to make, let's say 2 inches. And corners and all that, we want those also to be the sunshade fin. We can click OK. And the next part is the rail structure, but what I'm going to do is just click OK here for a second, and let's go ahead and draw a straight line here that's going to be the path of this sunshade system, and hit the checkbox to see what's happening here. And that's what I was afraid of. So I actually need to go back into this sunshade fin, and I'm going to rotate it by placing the origin point here at the origin. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. When you load that back in and hit overwrite, There we go. Your fins should be, and they're going to stretch like this, but we'll fix that there in a minute. Basically, whenever you make a baluster, wherever that top baluster, that reference plane is, it's always going to stretch based on the parameters of the railing. So we'll get that looking a little bit better here in a minute. So I had to rotate it. So actually, we should have probably performed that extrusion in a front view instead of the left view, but it doesn't matter if you just rotate it around. You should be getting kind of these double sections here. So what I'm going to do is, in order to work on this and customize it a little bit better, I want to cut a section through it so I can see what's happening with all the parts and pieces. So I'll cut a section and then look at it in this particular manner. So let's go back into our sunshade. I'm going to click on Edit Type. And the baluster placement here, I'm going to make sure my host base, all these things should be hosted at the base. And my top, I could actually make those hosted and then 6 inches high. If you remember, our top offset was like 6 inches in our model. Guess I have to do the same thing down here at the bottom. So there you go. That'll make that a little bit better. And the next thing we need to do is work with our railing system or our rail profile. Right now we've got all those circular members. I want to reference the blade, and then we're going to offset them in order to get a repeated pattern here. So I'm going to click on this and click Edit Type and go to Rail Structure. And let's go ahead and delete all of these rails again, except for the first one. And I'm going to change my profile to equal sunshade blade. Make my height at 6 inches and click OK. Let's just see where it ends up. So you get a blade, basically that football shape that we made.
Can you do that again, please?
I'm going to do that many times over and over again in order to get this to happen. So when I click on this, let's go to Edit Type. You're going to go to Rail Structure. I deleted all those cable rails that were associated with that initial one because we duplicated the cable rail. And where it says rail, doesn't matter which one it says, but I made it a 6-inch height, and I changed my profile to sunshade blade that we created. So now I'm going to duplicate this a couple times, and all we're going to do is change the offset. The offset, we'll keep the heights all at 6 inches because we want this to be a horizontal system, and basically we want the top of all these rails to be at 6 inches. So now I'm going to, let me play with the offset here real quick. I'll do 6 inches. Let me just make sure it's going in the right location, and it's not. Go back to baluster placement for a second. Why is that? Baluster host. Hold on 1 second. Okay, yeah, so I was getting some kind of weird, just trying to compress my fin there, and yeah, you're right. If you go back to the baluster placement, my top, instead of being hosted, so my base is at host, and my top is actually needs to connect to let's see, rail 1 or whatever your name of your first rail is. That should work. And I did that for all of those. Took out the little 6-inch top offset, and that got that correct there. I could add in if I wanted to. Kind of a 2-inch offset. Okay. So anyway, back to what we're doing here. Go back to edit type. And I'm going to go back to my rail structure, and we can go ahead and select this one row item, and we're going to duplicate it. And each time I duplicate it, I'm going to add in, it looks like I need to go negative actually. So I'm going to go -6 offset. I'll just do it on 6-foot increments to keep it easy. -1 foot. Next one would be -1 foot 6. -2 feet. -2 feet 6 inches. Let's look at what that does. So it looks like our little component here is needs to be a little bit thicker. So all I'll do is I should be able to go to edit, balusters, and make our rail structure higher. Say 8 inches. We'll keep it like that for now. And then once we've got that, and look at this in 3D, you can now see kind of the extruded sunshade system that you can get out of that. But the nice thing about this is using this as a rail system is that if you go back into level 1 or wherever you were drawing that and go back to railing, I can go ahead and draw this with any shape that I want. And I might want to flip that, so hit the space bar. Or that. Basically, your sun shading system is going to follow the curve, so you can get kind of this nice curve, and probably play with those corner posts there. Or what I would probably do is not do these straight pieces. And find a better joint there. So the railing tool, I want to stress, is not just for railings. You should be using it for other things, like anything that could be repetitive, has repetitive structure, and has some kind of unique profile that you want. And the nice thing about this too is, remember, it's a railing, so you could attach it to a sloped surface. So if you really wanted this to be a sloped sun shading system, which you probably wouldn't, but if you wanted this to be some kind of sloped element, you could have a sloped ramp or some kind of sloped floor, and all you have to do is host it to that component, and it will follow that slope.
Can you fill between the rails, say with glass?
In this case, you can make what's called a rail panel. So, but let's see, not in the horizontal fashion. In the vertical, you can actually make a glass panel. And so to do that, I can go over that one real quick, because I was actually going to open it up for questions, so that'd be a good one there. Any other questions? I'm going to kind of get a quick list here. So we'll do, basically, you make a curtain panel that's going to be placed as balusters that actually repeat over the pattern. Anything else that anyone's wondering about? Stair related or non-stair related?
Well, panel related, because I feel like we've looked at a couple different ways to draw elements. I had tried to use the divided surface drawing a family that was then applied to that surface, but as soon as I got away from the original reference plane, it got all messed up, and it also slowed our model way down. So I'm not sure what we're doing that isn't efficient.
Okay, that might be something, if you can load up your model, like right after the workshop, I can look at it to look at that specific element. Question up there? Anybody? Okay, so I'm going to do this basically if you want to, instead of having like, all these different rail systems, we've been going over these repetitive patterns plus the cable rail and kind of placing all these components. The other way to make a rail is also to use what's called a, basically the curtain panel. But it's not the curtain panel pattern-based family that we've talked about before. You'll notice that under railings, there is one here called glass panel, and it's bottom fill. But when we look at that, it's going to be a pretty, well, it's not pretty, it's a kind of a basic railing that comes with Revit. But the idea here is it gives you an example. So if I draw that. Basically has a glass panel and some other components to it. But what they're doing here is when we click on Edit Type and look at the rail structure and the baluster that's part of this, there's a rail system, so that's all these horizontal elements. And then there's a baluster placement, and you notice there's one here called steel flat, so that's the flat bar. And then there's another one here called, panel, glass 2 foot 8 inches or whatever. So what we can do is I can actually go back to View, User Interface, Recent Files. I'm going to open up a new, and there's one here called railing, actually baluster, here it is, baluster panel. So if we model with the baluster panel, and you'll notice that this template has a couple extra reference lines to it. One thing to keep in mind is if you ever come across the template, there's this one, and there's also another template that's the baluster post, or just the baluster that I didn't go into, but it has these same angled lines. This has to do with if you want to change the way that your element looks when it goes up a stair. And so what you want to make sure you're doing is whatever we model needs to be attached or referenced off of this left vertical, right vertical, and the top angle and bottom angle. So you can ignore these other reference planes. What I'm going to do is make an extrusion. And it wants to pick a plane again, so I want to choose what view we're in here. We're in the left plane or left elevation. So when I go to extrusion, pick a plane, I want to find center left right. Click OK, and now I'm in that mode. And what I'm going to do is actually make this glass panel where it's going to stretch basically to the boundaries of all of this, or you can make it stop a certain distance. Maybe we could add in some parameters that would lock it so it would be like an inch space all the way around. Which actually we might as well just do. I'm going to do a pick lines, and I'll make a offset of 1 inch. Now I'll just offset off of all of those lines, basically the 2 angles and also the 2 verticals. And then we want to trim these up. And one last thing we need to do, if we always want a 1 inch gap all the way around, we need to make sure we just tie dimensions and lock them from reference plane to that sketch line. And then I'm going to make my extrusion, typically you'd probably have maybe a 1/2 inch tempered glass or something, so I'll just do a 0.25 as the extrusion end and a negative 0.25 as the extrusion start. And I'll change my material here. You probably want it as a glass panel, or this would be another opportunity. Did I show you guys? I showed you guys the perforated mesh, right? So in that last class when we were doing the renderings and I did the perforated mesh that you could render, this would be another opportunity to do like perforated metal on your guardrail system. Just model it as a solid component, but then apply your cutout perforated metal, material pattern to it, and then when it renders, you would have your perforated rail. But for right now, we'll just do the glass system. Click on glass and then hit the checkbox out of that. So that's basically all I really need to do there. If I wanted to get more complicated, I've seen people, model in clips. So you'd model in like a clip here and a clip down at the bottom and so on, depending on how detailed you want to be. But I'm going to go ahead and do a save as. If I do save as family, and we'll call this, just call it rail panel. And then I'm going to load this into our project. So now when if I use this other railing as a template, I can click on edit type, and let me go ahead and duplicate this. I'll just call it number 2, that's fine. And where it says baluster, I can just change out my glass to the rail panel that I just created. And we'll probably have to place it per a specific pattern. Let's see here for a second. Click OK. And so right there, it is stretching to the boundary that's set up that's based on this pattern. So I'm doing a 1'4" and I'm telling it to repeat. It looks like there's, why is there that offset? Let's see, 1'4", that overlaps. So I got to play with this other pattern down here at the bottom, unless you want kind of that look, but you could change this pattern end at the value here. Let me try it, 1 foot. Can't tell if I'm getting better or worse. There we go. Oh, so yeah, this panel, the one thing that's a drawback about the panel is that you have to specify an actual size. If you remember, their example said 2 foot 8 inches. So I'm going to come back in here to my, I got so many things open, rail panel, and right here it says width 2 feet. Let's go ahead and I'm going to change this width to let's say 3 feet. And now what it's going to do is when it placed this as a baluster, it's placing this about the center line. And so if this is a 3 foot component, I'm going to be, the pattern's going to get a little bit confusing here, but it should make sense here in a minute. I'm going to load this back in. Just remember 3 foot. I'll overwrite. Oops. I want to overwrite the existing and its parameters. So that stretched it out, but the point of that is basically what it's doing is when we click at our baluster placement, this panel, if I change this to, like, let's say 1'6", 1'6". There we go. So because our panel width was already set, it's already predefined at 3 feet. If you kind of understand what that panel pattern is doing, it's saying 1'6" and then repeat this every 1'6". So basically that equals 3 feet in the end. So you kind of have to play around with the math a little bit. It's a little bit unclear sometimes, especially when you get a lot more panels in there. But you could add in different panels. So you could have like a 3 foot panel, a 2 foot panel, but you have to specify each of the panel widths that you're putting in, and then make sure you get the pattern right, as you place them each time. So I could do, multiple glass panels and come up with some kind of panel placement or some kind of pattern there. But you can add, other detail to that panel if you wanted to. So, I've seen people put in clips and other components in there as well. And again, a great opportunity for perforated metal for the material once you render it. Any other questions that you guys want to go over? If not, we can probably end it there, and I can help out with anyone's individual questions that you might have. Good? I'm supposed to be here next Monday and the Monday after, and you heard Jefferson and Kelly say, essentially I'm going to help you with your models in a specific nature, and it would be really helpful if you guys could email probably to Jefferson and Kelly, and then they can forward it on to me, exactly kind of what you're thinking about talking about on Monday. So. But if you can email by Friday, this way it gives me the weekend to sort of look over the notes and see what kind of troubles you guys are having, because it might make sense if some of you have the similar problems, we could get you in one group and kind of go over the same problems at the same time instead of kind of repeating things over and over again. And I could also try to make sure I record those sessions as well and just post them for a reference, just in case another group comes up with another problem that's similar, you'd have a place to reference. So I'll stay after for a little bit, and thank you. And if you guys have questions, feel free to email me. Thanks.